You do not need to strive, to beg, or to convince the world of your worth. The moment you assume your desire to be real, you are walking through a door that no man can shut. This is the power of the unseen realm, the kingdom within you. What appears to be locked to the senses is already open in the spirit. And when you dare to believe in that unseen door, when you walk by inner sight instead of outer evidence, God responds. Not a distant God, but the presence within you, your own wonderful I am. You were never meant to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You were never created to be anxious, troubled, or tossed about like a ship in a storm. You were formed in the image of peace, of stillness, of divine assurance, and the moment you remember who you are, worry begins to dissolve like mist before the morning sun. Worry is born out of forgetfulness, forgetfulness of your source, forgetfulness of your power, forgetfulness of the truth. You think you must fix it, solve it, push it, make it happen. But you do not. Life unfolds through assumption, not effort. God is not asking you to figure it out. God is asking you to rest in what already is. For what you desire already exists. The door is already open. The way is already made. But you cannot walk through it until you see it within, until you trust it within, until you accept it as already done. To stop worrying is to stop resisting. To stop worrying is to stop doubting that what you desire is yours. You stop worrying when you stop looking at appearances and start listening to the still, small voice within. That voice that says, all is well. That voice that declares the end from the beginning. That voice that knows the answer before the question ever forms on your lips. You say you trust God, but trust is not a word. It is a feeling. It is an inner conviction. Trust is quiet confidence in the invisible. Trust is the refusal to be moved by what your senses tell you. Trust is the awareness that the thing you want is already yours, because you saw it within. And having seen it within, it must take form without. Every time you worry, you are imagining something you do not want. And imagination is the workshop of reality. If you use your imagination against yourself, do not be surprised when fear becomes your experience. But if you learn to imagine only the good, only the lovely, only the fulfilled desire, then worry fades like a shadow at noon. This is not about pretending that you feel peaceful while inwardly you tremble. No, this is about reconditioning your inner world. This is about persistently assuming that the answer is done, that God has already moved, that the path is clear even if you can't see it yet, that everything is aligning even while the outer world still looks the same. You don't beg for what's already yours. You don't plead with God to do what's already been done. You assume it. You live from the end. You rest in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You let that feeling saturate your being. You walk through life not as someone hoping things will work out, but as one who knows they already have. When worry rises, it is only a signal you've forgotten who you are. Come back. Return to the inner sanctuary. Return to the vision. Assume the feeling of the answer and stay there. Dwell there. Live there. For it is in that sacred dwelling place that all things are added unto you, not by might, not by struggle, but by alignment. You stop worrying not by force, but by focus, by deliberately choosing again and again to feel as if it's already done, to trust that what you hold in consciousness must clothe itself in form. God is not far off, waiting to bless you. God is the power moving through your imagination, fulfilling every image you persistently accept as true. And so when the mind begins to wander, when fear whispers its lies, you answer it with knowing. You answer it with silence. You answer it with stillness that says, I already have it, that says it is finished, that says I trust the unseen more than the seen. And as you hold to that inner state, life bends. Reality reshapes itself. And what once caused you to worry now becomes the testimony of your faith. You were not created to worry. Worry is not your natural state. It is not your inheritance. From the beginning, you were fashioned out of divine peace, not anxiety. You were imagined into existence by a mind that only knows love, certainty, and infinite supply. You are not here to live by survival instincts or be tormented by doubt and fear. You are not meant to constantly brace for the worst, to feel at the mercy of circumstances, or to try to earn your worth through endless struggle. That idea that you must worry in order to be responsible, that you must be anxious to prove you care, is a lie passed down through generations of forgetfulness. The truth is far more powerful and far more simple. You were created to rest, to trust, to know within yourself that you are supported by a force far greater than your own willpower. Every time you worry, you are stepping outside your divine nature. You are entertaining a state of mind that contradicts the truth of who you are. Worry suggests that you are alone, that there is no divine orchestration, that what you desire may not come, that life may not support you, but none of that is real. It may feel real, it may appear loud and urgent, but it is not truth. You were not created to carry burdens heavier than your soul can hold. You were created to live from a place of harmony, faith, and inner knowing. Worry is not your responsibility. Creation is. You were given imagination, not panic. You were given inner vision, not inner torment. Worry is the misuse of imagination. It is the act of projecting into the future something unwanted and then emotionally preparing to receive it. But you were not meant to do this. You were meant to imagine the good, the lovely, the healing, the completed. You were meant to live from a place of knowing that everything is already finished in the mind of God, that all things are already aligned with your highest good. But you cannot see it if you are looking through the lens of worry. Worry distorts your spiritual vision. It clouds the truth and binds your awareness to fear. Stop for a moment and become still. Not in your body, but in your mind. Ask yourself, what if everything is already working out for me? What if the timing is already perfect? What if the door is already open in the unseen realm, and all I need to do is walk in consciousness until it appears in form? This is the place of divine remembrance, the place where you begin to feel your true self again. Not the self defined by effort and external evidence, but the self that knows the truth by feeling it, not by seeing it. You are not designed to live reactively. You were designed to live imaginatively. Worry makes you reactive. It convinces you that the outer world determines your fate. But you were never meant to respond to circumstances as if they are your master. You were created to rule over them, to rise above appearances, to bring forth the unseen into the seen through the power of inner conviction. When you worry, you step into a false identity, one where you believe that you must do it all alone, where your faith wavers with every obstacle. But when you trust, truly trust, you return to the knowing that you are backed by an eternal promise, that all you need is already provided. Worry is a habit of those who have forgotten that God lives within. It is a pattern, not a destiny. It is a state, not a sentence, and you have the power to choose again. You have the power to return to stillness, to return to truth, to let go of control and rest in the divine rhythm of your life. Let yourself be held. Let yourself be led. You are not created to carry everything, to fix every detail, to map out every outcome. You were created to see the end from the beginning, to walk by inner vision, and to trust that what you see within must come to pass. This is not laziness. This is divine confidence. This is not passivity. This is spiritual alignment. For when you know the outcome within, you stop scrambling in the outer, you stop panicking over timing, you stop doubting the path, you stop worshipping appearances, and instead return to the place of knowing. In that place, worry cannot exist, not because problems disappear, but because you stop identifying with them. You no longer say, this is my lack, or this is my fear, or this is my obstacle. You begin to say, this is passing, but I am eternal. This is noise, but I am peace. This is a shadow, but I am the light. You were not created to worry. You were created to assume the state of the answered prayer, the completed journey, the fulfilled vision. And as you live in that state, worry withers. It cannot grow in the presence of sustained inner faith. It cannot thrive in the atmosphere of divine remembrance. You return to who you are, not a warrior, not a struggler, not a beggar, but a being of light, of authority, of creative power. And life unfolds through assumption, not effort. The world will tell you to push, to grind, to hustle, to make it happen at all costs. But divine law is different. It doesn't operate through strain. It operates through stillness, through certainty, through the quiet acceptance that what you desire is already done, already waiting for you to align with it. Assumption is the key that unlocks the door. Not assumption in the worldly sense, not a guess, not a gamble, but spiritual assumption, the inner acceptance that the end is already yours, that the desire fulfilled is the only reality worth entertaining. You do not manifest by chasing. You do not receive by doubting. You receive by stepping into the feeling of the thing you want, and living from that place as though it were already yours. This is the sacred art of assumption. This is the quiet power that shapes mountains and parts seas, not by force but by faith. You assume the state of the answered prayer. You occupy the mind of the fulfilled desire. You speak from the victory, not toward it. And as you persist in that state, the outer world conforms, not because you fought it, but because you believe beyond it. Effort belongs to the realm of separation. Assumption belongs to the realm of oneness. Effort says, I must do something to make this real. Assumption says, it is already real, and I now live in harmony with it. This is not denial. This is not delusion. This is the boldness of spiritual awareness, the unshakable knowing that inner reality creates outer form, that nothing happens outside of consciousness, that what you consistently accept as true within must express itself without. The reason so many stay trapped in cycles of worry and effort is because they are still trying to create from lack. They are still assuming that they do not yet have what they want, and therefore they must do to get it. But what you do will always flow from what you believe. What you attract will always reflect what you assume. If you live in a state of I don't have, then no matter how much you work, you are reinforcing the absence of your desire. But if you live in the state of I already received, then every action becomes inspired. Every step becomes guided. Every moment becomes a bridge to the inevitable. You are not here to make it happen. You are here to assume it's already happened. That assumption becomes your dwelling place. That dwelling place becomes your reality. For as within, so without. As you believe, so shall it be. Assumption doesn't mean you don't act. It means your action is no longer frantic. It is no longer rooted in fear. It flows naturally, easily, with divine timing and precision, because it is anchored in a state of already having. You no longer ask, how will this happen? You declare, it has already happened. I need only stay faithful to the vision. When you live by assumption, you shift from effort to embodiment. You are no longer trying to get something. You are now being someone. You are being the version of yourself who already received the thing. You are thinking like them, feeling like them, moving through the world like them. That inner embodiment is the signal, the frequency, the magnetic field that draws your desire to you. Not through labor, but through alignment. You begin to see that every delay, every silence, every closed door was never punishment. It was only waiting for your assumption to match the promise. Life is not withholding from you. It is responding to you. It is mirroring your dominant inner state. Change your state, and the reflection must change, not because you earned it, but because you assumed it. This is the simplicity of divine law. It does not ask for perfection. It asks for persistence. Persistence in the inner knowing. Persistence in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Persistence in the assumption that what you see within is more real than what you see without. This is how the unseen becomes seen. This is how the impossible becomes inevitable. Not by the strength of your effort, but by the steadiness of your assumption. You live from the end, not toward it. You think from the desire fulfilled, not toward its fulfillment. You don't use prayer to beg. You use it to align. You don't use faith to cope. You use it to create. And creation is not a future event. It is a present awareness. The moment you assume it is done, something shifts in the unseen. The path begins to clear. The answer begins to form. The world, though it may seem unchanged, begins to bend around the one who dares to believe. And so you choose. In every moment you choose to worry or to assume. You choose to struggle or to trust. You choose to force or to align. One way leads to exhaustion. The other leads to peace. One builds a reality of fear. The other builds a reality of fulfillment. The choice is yours, and so is the power. Trust is not a word, it is a state of being. It is not something you say, it is something you feel. Many speak of trusting God, but their hearts remain in turmoil. Their minds are full of questions, doubts, and fearful imaginings. Trust, real trust, is silent. It does not argue with appearances. It does not demand evidence before it rests. It moves inward, settles into the unseen, and says quietly, it is already done. That is the essence of trust, not a desperate hoping, not a pleading prayer, but an inner agreement with the divine that what is promised is already fulfilled. You can only truly trust God when you have learned to trust the vision within yourself. The moment you see the desire clearly, and you feel the reality of it within, you are called to rest, to rest. Not in the sense of inactivity, but in the sense of inward stillness, the absence of resistance. That stillness is the fruit of trust. Trust knows the seed is already planted and does not dig it up daily to check for growth. Trust allows the process to unfold without panic. It understands that delay is not denial, that silence is not abandonment. It believes in divine orchestration even when the outer world seems out of tune. When you walk by sight, you will always be tossed by the winds of uncertainty. The world will show you contradictions, closed doors, rejection, lack, and your senses will scream that things are not working. But trust does not live by the senses. Trust lives by the inner eye. It feels the truth of what is coming, even when it cannot yet be touched. That is the great divide between the one who trusts and the one who wavers. The one who wavers demands external proof before they feel peace. The one who trusts feels peace before the proof appears, and in doing so they become the cause of the manifestation. To say you trust God while feeling anxious is to live in contradiction. True trust leaves no room for panic. It leaves no room for struggle. It doesn't mean you don't feel emotions. It means your emotions no longer have the final word. Trust makes you calm in the storm. It makes you laugh in the face of delay. It makes you declare, I already have it, even when there's no sign in sight. And that declaration is not empty. It is not made to impress others. It is the deep knowing that inner reality precedes outer form. So many claim to trust, yet they cannot rest. They cannot stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios. They cannot stop asking when, how, or what if. These are signs that the mind is still bound to the illusion of separation. You cannot trust God and believe you are alone. You cannot trust and still believe that life happens to you rather than through you. Trust reconnects you to your divine nature. It reminds you that you and God are not two. The power that created the universe lives in you. That power knows what you need, knows how to bring it, and is always working, even in the silence, even in the dark. Trust is not built in the light. It is built in the moments where you cannot see the way. It is built when you choose to believe despite the lack of evidence. It is built when you lean not on your own understanding, but on the inner conviction that the outcome is already secure. That kind of trust cannot be shaken, because it does not depend on facts. It depends on truth, and truth is unchanging. Truth says what you desire is already yours. Truth says, I go before you and make the crooked places straight. Truth says it is finished. You cultivate trust by returning again and again to the inner feeling of completion. You stop waiting for something to happen out there and begin to feel it has already happened within you. You stop speaking of your desire as something in the future and start referring to it as a current reality. That shift from future to present is the signature of trust. You begin to say, I am already healed. I already have my answer. It is already unfolding for me. And you say it not to make it true, but because you know it is true. Trust means letting go of timelines. It means releasing your attachment to outcomes. You no longer watch the clock or count the days. You no longer compare your journey to another's. You stop asking, why hasn't it happened yet? And instead affirm, it's unfolding perfectly. That kind of trust cannot be faked. It must be felt. And when you feel it, when you walk in it, you begin to see miracles. Not because you begged for them, but because you aligned with them. To trust God is to stop micromanaging the process. You do not need to figure out the how. You do not need to chase signs or manipulate circumstances. Your only job is to assume the end, to enter the state of the wish fulfilled, to remain there, unmoved, unshaken, resting in the knowing that what you have imagined, felt, and accepted as true is already on its way to form. The outer must respond to the inner. That is law. And trust is the bridge between the inner vision and the outer manifestation. Trust is also what sustains you in the waiting. It makes the wait feel short. It makes the silence feel sacred. When you truly trust, you stop rushing. You understand that divine timing is never late, and what is meant for you cannot miss you. You stop asking, what if it doesn't happen, and start declaring it has already happened. And as you live in that state, life bends around your inner assumption. The world rearranges itself to match the feeling you have chosen to dwell in. Imagination shapes reality. There is no power greater than the human imagination used with intention. It is the womb of all creation, the bridge between the seen and the unseen. What you consistently imagine, what you feel as real, must manifest. For imagination is not fantasy. It is the formative substance of all things. Everything that exists first existed in thought. Every structure, every invention, every miracle, every breakthrough was first a picture in someone's mind. That is the mystery of creation, and you hold it within you. You are not merely a spectator in this life. You are the cause of it. Most people imagine unconsciously. They replay fears, replay trauma, rehearse worst-case scenarios, and then they are shocked when their life reflects what they have been meditating on. But you cannot plant thorns and expect roses. You cannot entertain fear and expect peace. What you dwell on in imagination is what you water, and what you water grows. This is not punishment. This is not superstition. This is law. Imagination, clothed in feeling, is the seed of every event in your life. When you begin to use it consciously, to assume what you desire already exists, you become the master of your reality. You must understand that imagination is not just visualization. It is not just pictures in the mind. It is felt experience. It is entering a scene so deeply in consciousness that it becomes real to you. You feel it in your body. You see it with the inner eye. You hear the words, the sounds, the atmosphere of that desired outcome. You let it become so real inside you that the outer world loses its grip. That is when imagination becomes creation. Not when it is casual, but when it is saturated with emotion and belief. Every time you imagine the worst, you are creating it in seed form. Every time you imagine the best, you are creating it too. The world you live in tomorrow is being shaped by the images you hold today. You cannot escape this truth. You can only learn to use it. Use it to imagine from the end, not toward the end, but from it. Enter the state of the answered prayer and dwell there. Live there. Let it become more familiar to you than the old reality. Let the imagined experience become your new home in consciousness, and the outer must eventually come into agreement. You do not need to see results to know it's working. You only need to persist in the state. Reality is delayed, not denied. What you imagine now must take form if you hold to it. The longer you persist, the more inevitable it becomes. And it is not about intensity, it is about consistency. You must be more loyal to your imagination than to your fears. You must be more faithful to the image of the fulfilled desire than to the appearance of lack. That faith, quiet, steady, unwavering, is what brings the invisible into form. Imagination is the language of spirit. It is how the divine speaks to you. The dreams you dream, the desires you feel, the images that stir your heart, they are not random. They are invitations. Invitations to enter a new state of being, a new timeline, a new reality. But you cannot visit the state and expect it to manifest. You must move in. You must dwell in the scene of your desire fulfilled and refuse to leave. You must feel the outcome as real and let that feeling lead your thoughts, your actions, your emotions. That is the power of conscious imagination. The world around you is simply a reflection of what you've been imagining. Persistently. If you want to change the world, you must first change the image you hold within. That image, when combined with feeling and faith, becomes the mold through which life flows. Do not underestimate the quiet moments you spend in inner vision. Those moments are not idle. They are powerful. They are sacred. In those moments, you are creating not through toil, but through trust. Not through action, but through assumption. Not through force, but through feeling. If you would change your life, change your imagination. Stop telling the same story. Stop rehearsing lack. Stop repeating the old identity. Begin to imagine yourself as the person who already has what you desire. Imagine yourself living the life you've asked for. Let the scene unfold. Let the emotion rise. Let the feeling settle in your chest. And then stay there. Return to it daily. Visit it in the quiet. Walk through it in your mind. Speak from it. Think from it. Move from it. And you will see that the world has no choice but to catch up with the inner picture you've chosen to make real. There is no power outside of consciousness. The world is not happening to you. It is flowing from you, from your dominant images, from your persistent feelings, from your assumptions about what is possible. So assume wisely, imagine faithfully, feel deeply, and trust completely. For what you see within is not illusion. It is creation in progress. Peace is not something to be found. It is something to be remembered. It already exists within you, waiting to be uncovered the moment you stop resisting. What is in the silence between your thoughts, in the stillness beyond the noise of worry, there is peace. But it is not the peace that the world gives, conditioned by circumstance or external validation. It is the peace that comes from knowing that life is not random. It is ordered. It is intelligent. It is flowing from a higher mind, and that mind is not distant from you. It is you. The one who learns to dwell in this inner peace becomes a master over the outer world. It does not mean there will never be storms. It means you will not be moved by them. You may walk through valleys, but you will not be shaken. Why? Because you know that the storm has no power over the one who is anchored within. You know that appearances do not define truth. You have learned to rest while the world rushes, to be still while others panic, to smile when nothing seems to be working, because your peace is not based on what you see, but on what you know. Worry is always born from the illusion that something is missing, that something has gone wrong, that you are not where you are supposed to be. But nothing is missing. Even delays are divine. Even the detours are orchestrated. Even your so-called setbacks are leading you forward. When you understand this, peace becomes your natural state. You stop fighting the moment. You stop trying to escape what is, and instead begin to cooperate with it. You see the invisible hand guiding your path, and you walk with quiet confidence. To choose peace is to step outside the limitations of your old self. It is to renounce the constant need to control, to predict, to force. It is to release the lie that says, if I don't worry, things will fall apart. Peace is not passivity, it is power under control. It is the calm assurance that what you have committed to in consciousness is already working itself out in form. It is the recognition that the outer world does not need to change first for you to feel peace. You feel peace first, and then the outer world reflects it back to you. This peace is not born from logic. It is born from spiritual awareness. It comes when you realize that you are not separate from God, from the divine intelligence, from the source of life itself. When you know this deeply, not as theory but as experience, you stop reacting to life and start responding from a deeper place. You stop asking, what should I do, and begin affirming all is well. And from that place of peace, clarity comes, direction comes, inspiration flows. You are no longer acting from fear, but from alignment. Many are seeking peace through external change, a new job, a healed body, a resolved relationship. But lasting peace never comes from conditions. It comes from the state you choose to dwell in. You must first be peaceful in the unseen, in the in-between, in the unformed. You must carry peace into your imagination, into your assumptions, into your conversations with yourself. Peace must become your new emotional home. And when it does, everything in your life will begin to mirror that peace. You cannot carry peace and fear at the same time. You must choose which voice to listen to. Fear says, it's too late. Peace says, it's right on time. Fear says, what if it doesn't work out? Peace says, it already has. Fear tries to protect you by imagining all the ways you might suffer. Peace protects you by reminding you that nothing real can be lost, and nothing unreal can be threatened. When you choose peace, you are choosing to believe in a higher reality than the one your senses present to you. There is great wisdom in silence. When you no longer react, when you no longer defend, when you no longer argue with life, you make room for grace to enter. You make room for solutions to rise. You make room for the subtle nudges of spirit to guide you. The noise of worry drowns out divine instruction. But peace is a listening posture. It says, I don't have to know everything. I only have to be still enough to hear what is mine to know. In that stillness, wisdom comes, not through effort, but through surrender. You begin to see life differently when peace becomes your lens. You no longer judge what happens as good or bad. You no longer resist the process. You begin to trust that even when things fall apart, they are falling into place. That even when doors close, they are redirecting you to something better. You walk slower. You breathe deeper. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You become like the tree planted by the river, unmoved by the wind, grounded in knowing. The great illusion is that peace is a reward for getting everything right. But peace is the soil from which right action grows. You must begin with peace, not wait for it. You must become still within before the outer chaos subsides. This is how you stop living in reaction and start living in creation. You claim peace, not because everything is perfect, but because you know the truth. You are always held, always led, always enough. Nothing outside you can disturb your peace, unless you grant it permission. Living in the end means assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and staying there not occasionally, not when it's convenient, but as a way of life. It means moving your awareness into the reality where what you desire has already come to pass. You stop hoping and you begin knowing. You stop asking and you begin assuming. You no longer try to get there, you go there in consciousness, and from there you live, speak, and act. The end is not a far-off point in time. It is a state of consciousness, and you can enter that state right now. You don't have to wait for evidence. You don't have to wait for permission. You only have to make a decision. This is who I am now. This is what I have now. This is where I live now. And from that decision, you dwell in the new state, not as a guest, but as a resident. You stop visiting your desire. You take up residence in it. When you live in the end, you are not trying to become something. You are it. You are no longer seeking love, wealth, healing, or peace. You are the embodiment of those things. And because you have assumed that identity, the world reflects it back to you. It must. It has no choice. The world is a mirror, and it mirrors the state you consistently occupy. So when you live in the end, you make the end your starting point, and everything in your life begins to organize itself to match that internal reality. But to live in the end requires discipline, not of effort, but of attention. You must watch where your mind goes. You must notice when it slips back into the old state, into fear, lack, or doubt. And you must gently return it to the end, over and over again, until that state becomes your new normal. This is not repression, it is creation. You are not pretending. You are selecting the version of reality you choose to dwell in. You are choosing the inner landscape that will become your outer experience. Most people live in the middle. They start with a desire, then spend all their time in the how, the when, the why. They live in the gap between the wish and its fulfillment. And that gap is filled with frustration, doubt, and impatience. But you were never meant to live in the middle. You were meant to begin at the end, to live from the completed picture, to carry the tone of the answered prayer before it arrives. That is the secret. To live as though it has already happened. And when you do, it must happen. Living in the end makes you magnetic. You become the one who already has, and the one who has is never desperate, never in lack, never chasing. The one who has is still grateful, assured, and that assurance draws everything to it. You do not chase what you already are. You attract it by being it. You stop asking when will it come, and start saying it is already mine. That shift collapses time. It removes delay. It brings the unseen into the seen. You may ask, how can I live in the end when everything around me says otherwise? But the outer world is always a reflection of yesterday's assumptions. You do not need it to change first. You only need to persist in the new state, and the world will catch up. Your job is not to argue with appearances, but to remain loyal to the end. Your job is not to fight the old, but to feel the new. And feeling is everything. What you feel consistently becomes your life. To live in the end is to remember that you are the cause, not the effect. You are the author, not the victim. You are the scriptwriter, not the actor bound by lines written by someone else. You decide the outcome, and then you move your attention to that outcome and make it real within. Not one day, not someday. Now. The now moment is the only place where creation happens. And when you occupy that now with the energy of fulfillment, the world reshapes itself accordingly. There is no power in waiting. The power is in assuming now. The end is not a destination you reach. It is a reality you enter and inhabit, and once you inhabit it, everything that doesn't match that reality begins to dissolve. Old patterns fall away. Old stories lose their grip. Old circumstances begin to shift. Why? Because you have shifted. And when you shift, life shifts. Not because the world changed, but because you changed your position in consciousness. So stop chasing, stop waiting, stop begging, and start assuming. Assume the identity of the one who already has. Assume the feeling of the one who already is. Live from that place, walk from that place, speak from that place, and the world will bow to your assumption. For it is not the outer world that determines your state. It is your state that determines the outer world. And when you choose to live in the end becomes inevitable. The moment you let go of needing to know how it will happen, you open the door for it to happen in ways you could never imagine. The mind is conditioned to believe that it must figure out every detail, that it must map the path from desire to fulfillment, but there is a greater intelligence within you, an unseen current that already knows the way. And the moment you release your grip on the need to control, that current begins to flow. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means giving over. It means surrendering your limited strategies for the infinite wisdom that dwells within your own being. It means trusting that once you have imagined it, once you have felt it, once you have accepted it as real in your consciousness, the way to it is already prepared. The bridges of incident are already set in motion. The characters you need to meet, the events that must unfold, the circumstances that will lead you there, they are already moving toward you, silently without effort on your part. But as long as you cling to the how, you interfere with the process. As long as you obsess over the details, you signal to your deeper self that you do not truly believe it is done. You may say, I trust, but your anxiety over the timing and method betrays your words. Real trust is silent. It is still. It rests. It no longer asks. It knows. And because it knows, it lets go. You let go of the need to see it now, because you understand that all things come forth in divine timing. You let go of needing others to validate your vision, because you know that no one else needs to see it for it to be real. You let go of doubt, not by forcing yourself to be positive, but by shifting your focus from the outer to the inner. You go back to the feeling, you go back to the knowing. You remind yourself that you did not imagine in vain. You remind yourself that the act of imagining is the act of creation, and creation is complete the moment it is conceived. There is nothing more liberating than realizing you do not have to make it happen. You only have to allow it to happen. You allow by becoming receptive. You become receptive by aligning yourself with the state in which your desire is already fulfilled. And you stay there, not because you see evidence, but because you have decided to trust your inner reality over appearances. And the longer you remain in that state, the more you dissolve resistance. The more you let go of effort, the more you enter flow. The natural tendency of the old mind is to worry, to analyze, to calculate. But the deeper you go into awareness, the more you realize that none of that is necessary. The mind may scream, but what about this? What if it doesn't happen? What if I fail? And you simply return to stillness. You return to the truth that you are not alone in this. You are not creating by force. You are allowing by faith. And that faith is not blind. It is based on your inner experience. It is based on your decision to dwell in the end. There is a subtle but profound shift that happens when you let go. You stop pushing. You stop trying to make things happen through human effort alone. You rest in the knowing that what is meant for you is already yours. And that knowing magnetizes it to you, not through striving, but through surrender. Not through performance, but through presence. You no longer carry the weight of your future. You trust that it is unfolding perfectly, and that trust becomes your peace. Letting go is not passive. It is deeply active in the invisible realms. It is the choice to remain loyal to the unseen. It is the decision to abide in the vibration of fulfillment even when nothing around you reflects it. It is the power of becoming empty, so that life can pour into you the form your imagination has constructed. The one who lets go becomes like the open hand. Nothing is forced and nothing is blocked. Life flows through the open hand. Life responds to the one who trusts. You begin to realize that it's not your job to carry the how. Your only job is to carry the feeling, the assumption, the end state. That is your offering to the divine within you. You say, here is the version of reality I choose to live in. And the divine responds, not to your words, but to your vibration. It arranges circumstances, people and moments to reflect back what you have already accepted is true. And so you no longer chase. You no longer beg. You no longer argue with appearances. You simply return to the silence within. You go back to the imaginal act. You go back to the inner state where it is already done. And then you release. Not because you are indifferent, but because you are certain. And that certainty is what moves mountains. Once you let go, you begin to notice signs. Not because you are searching for them, but because you are aligned with the state where they naturally appear. You begin to feel supported. You begin to feel guided. You begin to walk with ease, knowing that your path is blessed. You act when inspired and rest when not. You stop measuring progress with your eyes and start measuring it with your peace. If peace is present, you are on track. If tension rises, you return to stillness. And over time, you notice something miraculous. Things begin to unfold without your interference. What once felt hard now feels light. What once seemed impossible now happens without effort. Why? Because you stopped trying to do what only trust could do. You stopped carrying the burden, and you let the divine intelligence within you take over. That intelligence knows what to do, when to do it, and how to do it in the most effortless, elegant way. So you make letting go your way of life. You hold the vision, you feel the end, and then you release. Again and again, you return to that posture of surrender. And in that surrender, you discover freedom. You discover that life works not when you control it, but when you align with it. When you begin to act from faith, rather than fear, everything changes. Faith acts with assurance. It does not wait for evidence. It creates it. It does not beg for signs. It becomes the sign. To act from faith is to live as though it is already done. It is to walk into the room with the confidence of one who knows they are already chosen. It is to speak with the tone of one who already has what they desire. Not because they are faking it, but because they are anchored in an inner knowing, deeper than the senses. Faith is not blind. Faith sees what the eyes cannot. It perceives the unseen, and it dares to call it real. It does not waver when conditions contradict the vision. It does not collapse under the weight of delay. Faith says, though I do not yet see it, I know it is mine, and from that knowing, action flows. Not action to prove, not action to earn, but action to align. Acting from faith means your behavior begins to match your assumption. If you believe yourself to be abundant, you walk in generosity. If you see yourself as healed, you carry the energy of vitality. If you see yourself as loved, you respond with openness. You are not pretending. You are embodying. You are not performing. You are participating in the reality you have already claimed. Fear always acts from survival. It says, I must do this or I will lose. Faith acts from creation. It says, because I am this, I do this. And there is a world of difference between the two. When you act from fear, you are reinforcing the state you are trying to escape. When you act from faith, you are strengthening the state you have chosen to live in. One leads to exhaustion, the other leads to expansion. Faith does not require perfection. It only requires persistence. It means returning again and again to the truth of who you are. When doubts arise, and they will, you do not fight them. You simply shift. You remember. You return to the state of the wish fulfilled, and you let that state guide your steps. You begin to trust the nudges. You begin to follow intuition. You stop second-guessing every move, because you know that when you dwell in the right state, the right actions follow. The actions taken from faith feel light. They feel inspired. They are often simple, even small, but they open doors. They create movement. They initiate the unfolding of your desire in time and space. You may be led to call someone, to send an email, to apply for something, to go somewhere unexpected. And as you obey those small prompts, you realize that each step is part of a larger orchestration that your conscious mind could never have arranged. This is the dance between inner and outer. You feel the end, you dwell in it, and then you act in accordance with it. Not to make it happen, but because it already has. You do not wait for the external to confirm your state. You express your state into the external. You become the cause, and the world becomes your echo. Even when nothing seems to be changing, faith keeps you steady. You know that just as a seed takes time to break through the soil, your inner work is germinating. You know that what you have assumed will come forth not through effort, but through resonance. And so you act not out of desperation, but out of alignment. You do what feels natural in the state of the wish fulfilled. You live from the end, and life responds. To act from faith is to honor your imagination as truth. It is to treat your inner world with reverence. It is to move through the world as if what you desire is already fact. And in doing so, you draw that fact into form. Your movement becomes your magnet. Your decisions become declarations. Your life becomes a mirror of the state you have chosen to embody. And this is how manifestation becomes effortless. Not because you did nothing, but because you acted from the right state. You lived from fulfillment rather than lack. You took steps not to get something, but to express who you already are. That is the difference. That is the power. And when you master this, there is nothing you cannot be, do, or have. For the one who acts from faith is never acting alone. In the end, the journey to stop worrying and truly trust is a journey inward, a surrender to the infinite wisdom and power that already reside within you. It is a commitment to live not by what the eyes see or the mind fears, but by what the heart knows and the imagination feels. When you release control over the how and the when you let go and let the divine flow through you, you open yourself to a life of ease, grace, and fulfillment. Acting from faith, anchored in the certainty of your fulfilled desire, transforms every step into an expression of your inner truth. Trust is not passive. It is the highest form of power, power that moves mountains, shifts realities, and draws to you all that you have imagined. This trust is your peace, your freedom, your creative force. And with it you become unstoppable. You do not move doors by effort. You move them by knowing. The door swings open the moment you assume the state of already having walked through it. The world may say, it's impossible. But the world is merely the echo of yesterday's beliefs. It cannot bind what God has already loosed. It cannot close what God has opened within you. There is no need to force anything. The door is not held shut by man's opinion, by circumstance, or by delay. It is only your own consciousness that opens or shuts it. If you feel yourself to be unworthy, the door remains closed. Not by judgment, but by your own refusal to see yourself as God sees you. But when you rise in awareness, when you say inwardly, I am already what I long to be, then the door appears. And not only appears, but swings open in a way that confounds reason. You are not waiting on the door. The door is waiting on you, waiting on your recognition, your identification, your willingness to feel the reality of what is unseen. And when you do, you will find that no one, no system, no limitation, no voice of doubt can close what has been opened in spirit. God does not consult the opinions of others to open a path for you. It is done in silence, in stillness, in the hidden chamber of your own being. Others may not understand it. They may wonder how, or why, or through whom, but you will know. You will know that it was not by might, not by power, but by the inner awareness of I am. Assumption opens doors. This truth, so simple and yet so profound, is the cornerstone of all transformation. When you assume something to be real, you are not merely imagining it as a hopeful fantasy. You are placing yourself in the state of fulfillment. You are stepping into the dimension where that reality already exists. It is not a matter of hoping or wishing. It is a matter of knowing and living from the end. The assumption is the act of faith, the movement of inner being toward what is already yours in spirit. And once you make that assumption and abide in it, the outer world must conform. It has no choice. It is clay in the hands of the potter, and your inner state is the potter. The world you see is not fixed, it is fluid. It is not permanent, it is shaped and reshaped by your thoughts, your feelings, and above all, your assumptions. Whatever you accept as true of yourself begins to manifest in your experience. So when you assume that the door is open, you are not waiting for a sign, you are creating the sign. You are generating the movement. You are activating the invisible power of God within you. You are becoming the living testimony of the unseen law that governs all things. To assume is to trust the unseen more than the seen. It is to believe in the invisible structure of reality more than the shifting sands of circumstance. And yet that is the great challenge, because the senses scream for evidence. The mind demands proof. The world whispers, wait and see. But the Spirit knows. Believe and you will see. The assumption precedes the fact. The inner act creates the outer result. What you assume becomes your atmosphere. It surrounds you. It radiates from you. It becomes the field through which all things filter. You cannot hold an assumption and not see its reflection. Eventually, in the mirror of your life, some reflections may be instant. Others may take time. But time is irrelevant to the law. Time is merely the unfolding of what is already done in the invisible. And so, assume the best. Assume the door is not just open, but welcoming. Assume the path is already prepared, the answer already sent, the way already cleared. Let that assumption fill your mind in the quiet moments. Let it walk with you, speak through you, breathe in you, become the embodiment of that reality. Don't wait for confirmation, be the confirmation. The moment you do, you will feel the shift. The calm confidence will settle in. A sense of ease will arise. You will stop striving because you will know it is already done. Heed. When you walk by inner sight, your confidence is not rooted in outcomes but in identity. You are not swayed by results. You are led by revelation. You know who you are, and from that knowing you see what is yours. You see the door open not because it is honed yet in the physical, but because you have seen it so clearly within that. You cannot be denied. That vision becomes your compass, your anchor, your source of peace. And what happens when you live this way? Reality bends, people appear, opportunities align, coincidences increase. But these are not signs to start believing. They are results of your believing. You don't believe because things happen. Things happen because you believe. You don't wait to see before you accept. You accept and then you see. So continue to lift your inner sight above outer evidence. Continue to walk through the doors you see in spirit, even if the hallway is still dark. Trust that what is formed within will take form without. Know that your faith is never wasted. The seed of vision will grow. The dream, when nurtured by inner sight, will become substance. The invisible will become visible. And the door once imagined as open will soon be open in truth. And so, beloved, let this truth settle into your spirit. The door is already open, not by man's permission, but by divine authority. Not because of striving, but because you dared to believe. Your assumption has power. Your vision is sacred. Your inner agreement with the promise is the key that no hand can remove. Walk not by what you see, but by who you know yourself to be in spirit. For when you remain faithful to the end you have seen, the world must reshape itself to match your inner reality. Delay is not defeat. Rejection is not final, and the no of man cannot